My name is Martina Swiga. I am an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. I do general practice and I specialize in criminal law, intellectual property, family law, and property law, among all the other areas of the law. And today I am doing an explainer on criminal aspects of the law because that is what touches most of the Kenyans. And I would like to explain something that may seem obvious, but is not obvious until you are found in that situation. So I wanted to go through the rights of an accused person vis-a-vis who a suspect is and who an accused person is. So to start off, an accused person is someone who's been formally charged before a court of law. That is when you become an accused person. That means you have taken plea and you're now undergoing the formal process of the law, which is the trial. And then we have a suspect. A suspect is anyone who is suspected to have committed an offense. And just because you're a suspect does not necessarily mean that you will be an accused person. So the police have the authority and powers to investigate anyone that they think may have committed an offense, and such investigations are what then now morph to be, once they complete investigations, they will either release you unconditionally or charge you formally before a court of law. So it is very important when you're a suspect to have an advocate with you so as to help you go through this process, because sometimes if you're a suspect, they may have custodial orders through a miscellaneous application that they've taken before court to have you in custody as they continue to investigate. So it is important as a suspect to have an advocate who understands criminal litigation so as to ensure that the process that they follow is according to the law. And even if you do not have an advocate, for reasons that maybe you have not been able to get an advocate, if they present you before a court of law, it is your right to lift up your hand and explain to the court that I have not yet been able to see my advocate, because the right to your advocate is actually provided for in the Constitution and it cannot be limited. That is one of the rights that can never be limited, the right to legal representation. So it is important for you to work with an advocate so as to ensure that they follow, the prosecutor and the court, everyone is following the law and you're not charged wrongfully or unfairly or contrary to what the provision of the law gives. One thing for sure about an accused person now, let's go to an accused person. There are some stages that you will encounter as an accused person. First, when you are arrested and during the investigation. At that time, there are still rights that you have. For instance, in our Constitution, we have those rights that can be limited and those rights that are not capable of being limited. A right that can be limited, for instance, is like the right to liberty. If you're in custody, then your right to liberty has been limited. Or if you've been charged and you're praying for bail and bond is subject to certain conditions, and that is a right that may be limited. But rights that cannot be limited are rights such as rights to a legal representative, and the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty, and such and such. So during investigation and arrest, you have the right to remain silent. You can decide not to tell the police or the investigator anything. That is your right, and they don't have to coerce you and treat you in an inhumane way to try and make you say things that you do not want to say. In any event, if you ever find yourself in a position where they have forced you to sign a witness statement, you can sign and write under protest, and that is your right. And then the first instance when you're presented before a court of law, it is for you to raise your hand if you do not have an advocate and tell the court that the police forced you or made sure that you sign a statement that you did not voluntarily sign, and you did so under protest, and then the court will make the relevant decisions and directions to that effect. Another important right for a person who's been accused and is facing arrest and investigation is the right to be informed the reason for the arrest and the charges that are likely to be preferred. So make sure you ask, and you do not have to be rude about it, nor do they have to treat you like you are at their mercy, but within the confines of the law. You also have the right to the legal representation, as I have indicated, and also to fair and humane treatment by the police or any other person who's mandated to investigate you. It could be the National Police Service or persons under the DCI or EACC or anyone who's charged, who's been designated to have the investigative powers, can summon you or arrest you to ask you questions to help them decide whether or not they will prefer charges on you or anyone else that is relevant to whatever it is they're investigating. Be that as it may, now during the trial, the rights that you have, for instance, is the right to bail or bond pending the hearing and determination of the trial. But as I indicated before, that right is limited, may be limited, but there's some circumstances, and I would like to tackle that alone in the next explainer because it is quite broad, and I would want the listeners to have a proper understanding as to the right of bail and bond. But that is a right that you have as an accused person. You also still have the right to your legal representative. And in some instances, in charges like murder and robbery with violence, if you do not have an advocate, or you're not able to afford an advocate of your choice, then it is the duty of the state to provide to you a pro bono advocate that will represent you free of charge. Okay, because such a grave charge requires that a person who understands the law is working with you in this journey. One of the greatest rights that almost slipped my mind is the presumption of innocence. Whether you're an arrested person, an accused person, or a suspect, the presumption of innocence remains until the contrary is proven. Until the judgment, when you're either convicted or acquitted, you are proven to be innocent until proven guilty. You are innocent until proven guilty, and that is the presumption. And with that presumption is why most times it is important for you to have an advocate to help you understand or to navigate the trial process. Unfortunately, here in Kenya, the wheels of justice, they grind very, very slowly, and you may get frustrated as you're trying to pursue your rights, or you may not know how, and that is why it is very important for you to get an advocate to represent you. And if you're not able to, you indicate to the court for offenses such as murder so that they can provide to you a pro bono advocate. Another right of an accused person is to be present during the trial. But that, like other rights, can be limited, because if it shows that the accused person is creating more problems being in the trial than not, then trust me, you will not be present in your trial. But that is a right subject to limitation. Another right is that you have the right to speedy trial. As much as the wheels of justice in Kenya grind very slowly, the law has provided explicitly in the Constitution that you have the right to have a fair and free a fair trial, that is a public trial, and the same should happen in a speedy manner. Now, with reference to whether the trial will be public, depends on some circumstances. For instance, if the accused person is below 18, then you'll find that sometimes the courts make the trial not to be a public trial, meaning they control the persons who are within the court just for the purposes of protecting the interests of a child, because anyone who's below 18 is considered a child. Also, in the instances where there are protected witnesses who are going to testify, the court can, on its own motion or by application, decide to close off the public trial and just have so that the witness can be protected if the witness is a protected witness. So I believe that should sum up my explainer on the rights of an arrested person, the rights of a suspect, and the rights of an accused person. And I will see you next time when I'm explaining on bail and bond provisions. Thank you.